Good morning and welcome back to this week's video interview with a leading thinker in business. And this week I am really excited to introduce Oliver Booth. Good morning, Ollie.
Good morning.
And Ollie is actually someone that I have known for, it's going to be more than 10 years, I think now, Ollie, that you and I have been working together, both as a candidate when he's been looking for new opportunities, as well as a really key client for myself. And Oliver is a professionally qualified accountant operating at the financial controller level. And I thought it would be really handy to invite you on, Ollie, because you helped us with a blog post a few months ago that I know really supported our finance candidate base. And that was around the fact that a career in finance doesn't need to begin with 5 A stars, and that there are different routes. So I kind of thought it would be great to have you on here today and just talk about how to build a career in finance, but actually perhaps not the traditional route that most candidates think you have to go down. So now I'll give you a huge introduction. Do you want to say hello?
So hi, I'm Ollie. I've been working in finance for over 25 years almost. And as the blog post suggested, that 5 A's, A to C's didn't happen for me. I didn't get one, but here I am.
Exactly, and I think that's a really good story because, like I alluded to there, most people think that you perhaps have to go into a career in finance down the traditional route, which would be GCSEs, A-levels, degree in finance and accountancy, or maybe in maths, and then move straight into a finance graduate programme onto a graduate scheme doing CIMA or ACCA. And I think that's what people's perception is. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, but you have a different story. So how would you describe your experience then of getting into finance?
So mine was relatively interesting. I left school I was just under 16, so I was still only 15. And basically, at the time, there was a YTS program in place, youth trainee scheme. So I entered into, I knew I enjoyed working with numbers. I'd always done that from, in my own private life, adding up my mum's shopping trolley when I was a kid, adding up the numbers on the hymn board at church, etc. So passing the time, it was always something around numbers, analytical. Always enjoyed things like puzzles and things where, there was a requirement to use an analytical brain and, and find things out as such and investigate things. So that's always been in my mind. But when I left school, that youth training scheme was vital for me just to get into the workplace. And it just gave me a bit of a springboard really into what real work was like. I was still quite a young 15-year-old, so it was I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how businesses worked. I didn't know how functions, finance departments worked or anything like that. So it was a real kind of eye-opener for me, but that's where I kind of started.
And I think that's really important at this moment of time as well, because the government has obviously really ramped up their support for apprenticeship programmes and helping people return to work, especially that young age bracket. I think they're really trying to support the 18 to 25-year-olds, aren't they?
Yeah.
So and granted, the YTS scheme, what it was back then, it doesn't really exist now, does it? It's more of a trainee scheme that they put you into, but it's a version of it, isn't it? And I think it's a great entry to business, especially if you don't want to stay in education. I think the education is different now, isn't it? They keep you in, don't they, until you're 18 rather than releasing you at 16. But I think maybe going down the graduate route isn't for everybody. So if they can perhaps look at more trainee schemes, we could bring through a different level of talent just from a different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the training scheme, I had an opportunity a while back where we actually brought a trainee into a business I was in. We tried to give back something that gave me a great opportunity. We tried to do the same for somebody else. It was relatively successful. It gave them a platform and a springboard. But at the end of the day, I didn't really enjoy school, so I didn't really fulfill my full potential. So I didn't show what I was genuinely capable of doing. So when I did leave school, I didn't necessarily get the grades that I was expected to get, or perhaps should have got. So yeah, the training scheme is a really good kind of platform and just shows really that you don't necessarily have to have those grades. Yes, it's great to have them; they certainly help, But at that stage, of your career, it's not all about those grades.
No, and I think that's a really important distinction there, as in school might not be for you, college might not be for you, but if you find a role that you enjoy, and you can apply yourself like you have, because you've gone on to become a fully qualified accountant despite not enjoying school, but you've taken yourself back into education, and you're at a very senior level within a business and have worked for some really large firms over the years, haven't you? So it is entirely possible, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, for me, it wasn't about the fact that I didn't enjoy studying or learning. I actually do. It was just that personal circumstances, maybe didn't help when I was at school, and therefore, didn't push me enough and didn't make me focus enough and actually realise what was important. Perhaps being probably quite an immature or youngster as such, didn't recognise really the importance of it. People are very different today, but yeah, it didn't work for me. That didn't. So the YTS scheme was good.
So in terms of, like, say then the educational route that you followed, what got you to the point where you decided to start studying CIMA?
So even as soon as I left school, to be fair, I went back to Stoke-on-Trent College. I did a number of different resits. I did enjoy learning, as fun as it sounds. So what led me into that really is I went into a finance department as a YTS, and very quickly they recognised I was hardworking. One of the things about me is I always put in 110% plus, and I never stopped working hard as such. So they soon recognised that actually there was more to me. I think they saw that because I was working so hard, they felt they had to give me more opportunity. They realised I was learning fast, I was progressing quickly, and actually in order to grow, they needed to give me more work in various roles. So I very quickly worked my way around a finance organisation within a large multinational.
I think that's something. Sorry, Ollie. I think that's really important to pick out. Really, is that any business that you go into, and I think you allude to this in your blog post, hard work pays dividends. Those are your words, and I think you're right. If you go into a business, no matter what level of experience, but you work really hard and you show your professional ethics and your commitment and your drive to do well, a business, as long as they're the right type of business, they're going to support you, aren't they? And they're going to allow you to flourish. And I think that's what's key now, and that's what we need to do for our people, isn't it? We need to support the ones that are really working hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I try and put that into my approach, even with members of my team. If they're incredibly hardworking and they've got a desire to want to succeed and want to perform well, they don't have to be the best, because you can guide them, you can nurture them, you can support them. And in the same way that when I started, I had all that drive and all that ambition, all that desire and hard working approach, as well as the honesty and the ethics, etc. They realised that there was probably a good egg in there deep down. It just needed support. It just needed nurturing, and if you've got that, most of the time a manager will recognise that. Who wants somebody who's not hard working? They want somebody who's got a real desire. You can have the smartest person in the world, but if they can't be bothered, you're going to get less out of them than the hardest working person in the world, who perhaps hasn't got the grades or the experience, and you can give that to people as a manager. So I was lucky that I had that, because I showed all of those qualities. That I, in numerous roles, no matter where I've been, I've always been given a huge amount of support, which I'm eternally grateful for, because it's helped push me in my career. And without them, I wouldn't have been there. But I know it's a two-way thing.
Yeah,
I know that side of me is what gave them the view that actually, if they help me, then they'll get more than that back.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point as well, because I think individuals who come into a business, let's talk specifically about finance. If you go into a finance role and you want to go down the route of doing, whether it's your AAT or your CIMA, ACCA, ACA, they all cost the business financially, don't they, to support you through that study, and it's financial as well as time, because they have to give you time to go away for revise and take your exams as well. So I think you've got to earn that support as well, haven't you, in terms of you've got to work hard, you've got to demonstrate your ability, but demonstrate your attitude towards that business, because they're investing in you as a person, aren't they? And you're going to give that back to the business if you become professionally qualified.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's an investment in their part, but they have to see that you've got something that's worth investing in. And like I say, it doesn't have to be you don't have to be the greatest accountant from the very beginning. You just have to show a desire and an eagerness to want to succeed and demonstrate that you're hardworking. If you can show that, then they will 9 times out of 10 reward that in one fashion or another, whether it be a promotion, whether it be more support, whether it be the exams as such, the accountancy exams.
Are there perhaps any tips you would give to finance candidates trying to progress their career? And your tips might be different right now, because obviously we're in a pandemic at the moment, but is there anything you would say? And I can pass people back to the blog post as well, because there's lots on there, but what would you pass on to a candidate if they're looking to push on in their career at the moment?
Yeah, I think at the very early stages, when you're first starting out, and it does carry on, but certainly you've got to demonstrate that hard-working approach, the commitment. Finance isn't always 9 to 5. So sometimes that does require additional hours, demonstrating that you're flexible, that you are hardworking, that you're prepared to go over and above, whether that be extra work, whether it be the variety of work, especially when you mentioned lockdown, supporting others within the team, or whether it be staying the extra hour, 2 hours, etc., to get the job done, or supporting your manager. I've had people who've walked into my office and taken work off my desk because they know how busy I am, and have said, I'll take this off you. I know you're busy. That's fantastic, really. That shows that that's the hard work and they're prepared to do more than just their standard job as such. So that's absolutely critical, demonstrating all that. But then also having a desire to understand what goes on in the business. Finance is certainly a support function for a business. So knowing all the different other functions, certainly within larger organisations, but as important in smaller organisations, what goes on within other departments is also critical. It's vital. You can help them and play that important support role. And from a manager's perspective, if you've got an employee showing that eagerness to help other people, show that finance isn't just the number crunchers, they're actually there as a support function for all other areas of the business.
Ollie, you're so right. The other day I read an article that suggested that we need to make accountants key workers, because they have supported the function of so many businesses throughout lockdown in order to survive this period, from a financial control perspective. And I thought, you know what, you're right, because there aren't many accountants that I know that weren't really busy during lockdown, because it's such... Finance, really does lead the way for business, doesn't it? Fail or success.
Yeah, of course it can do. Cash is one of those things. As they say, cash is king, don't they? In the finance function, you've got your credit control, your purchase ledger. Without those functions working successfully, no business will ever survive anyway. So, I appreciate the sales approach that, you wouldn't have anything if you didn't have the sales. But at the same time, you can give everything away, but if you don't get the cash in, no business will survive.
Of course.
That's key as well. But I think also the relationships within a business are also vital. So showing that you are that support function, you're there to help other people, I think is also key. A business works as an organism, doesn't it? Every bit working together. And if they're not pulling together in the right direction, then it's going to become more challenging for everybody.
I think over the years, finance has definitely become more of, say, a finance business partner role to a degree, hasn't it? You're partnering with all the different teams, whether it's commercial teams, sales teams, marketing, operational teams. And I think you have to remember as a finance person that you understand the numbers, but actually the teams that you're dealing with might not necessarily. So having that ability to communicate to people who perhaps don't understand the importance of the numbers is really key. Building those relationships, like you said, it's so important. You can't just sit there in your office, can you, and crunch the numbers. That's not going to make you a vital part of a business.
No, you also have to, part of the role is to provide budgetary information, budgetary control. So, you know, and having to sit down with all other stakeholders within a business and actually look at where their budget is, look at, you know, how much they've spent, etc., but also put it into a format that's meaningful. You know, not everybody's a numbers person.
No.
You know, I deal with all sorts of health and safety departments, you know, IT, production, etc. Perhaps not numbers people, but you've got to tailor things in a way that they understand it. And also part of that support function is being able to interpret it for them, so you can help to guide them and help them with their structures as such in their departments.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so that'll be another tip really, just to build those relationships, because you know, you, as a finance person, you interact with almost everybody in the business. I know myself, I can be involved in all sorts of IT and human resources, even from my side in a smaller business. But in a larger business, I'm still going to have an input, even if you've got an HR department or an IT department. You know, I'd still be there to run by the numbers, or, you know, understand what the impact is from the financial side. So that is also key. So certainly when you're starting out, building those relationships, so then when you do progress, and you know, the management sees what you're capable of doing, they also can see that you've got a good kind of basis on which to build relationships with other people. So they're not just promoting somebody, or, you know, pushing somebody on who's just going to create conflict within a business. You know,
of course.
That's not what they want. So I think that to me would be the key tip as well.
I think that's a really interesting point then, in terms of not creating conflict in a business, because I think finance, I believe when I look at some of the finance departments we support, other departments just revolve around the finance team in terms of what they do. They touch so many different departments, don't they? They have to communicate with so many different departments. So you being able to communicate is huge in terms of your success and being able to work with a business and carry them forward, you know. Have you ever faced any challenges that, you know, you would perhaps in your career as the years have gone that you'd like to share, where you've had to do something different to get somewhere in your career point?
I think one of the key areas in a previous role, I found that I went into it wasn't a small business, you know, it was a £16 million turnover business, but I think they'd grown very quickly. So right. A lot of the people that had been with the business from the start had come with them, and when I went in fairly late on in the business kind of growth as such, we found that a lot of the individuals were very much a mindset of a smaller business.
Right, okay.
That business had been taken over by a huge multinational, a huge PLC, and I was almost brought in to help them with their controls and their processes and things like that, which were, I wouldn't say out of hand, but they were certainly not following the correct procedures of a PLC. So from an audit perspective, it was not ideal. They weren't getting very good audit scores, etc. So part of my role was to help support them and improve that. And one of the biggest challenges I found was probably working with the individuals, and it's very hard to stay calm. It is incredibly hard to stay calm, and I can't say I always did it. You know, I've got my own failings I need to improve on, but one thing I did find was you can often be battling with people, so you're trying to do it the right way, and that's the PLC way, that's the way they want it. But you've got an individual who just doesn't know that, he doesn't understand that, he doesn't see the need for it. It creates them more work, etc. That's probably one of the biggest challenges. So one of the things I've always had to do is try and tailor my approach. So 1 minute it's very softly and trying to encourage them, and then it's more stamp my feet, this is what we need to do. And then keep going, and like I say, I've not lost my cool completely, but I've certainly found it very challenging when people they just don't want to do it, and they've got to, and that's what needs to be done.
But actually, Olly, and I've known you through this period, and I know the business that you're talking about, but your persistence there, which I think is really important, enabled you to transform that business from a financial control perspective, didn't it? And very other areas as well. And as much as that role was challenging for you, it was actually one that you really enjoyed, wasn't it? Come the end, you really enjoyed what you'd done, didn't you? Yeah.
It was a challenge at the start. It definitely was a challenge at the start. And we had a number of those challenges with more than a couple of individuals. And, it wasn't a personal thing. It was just professional. It was just.
Do you know what? I can understand it though, Olly, as in you'd gone into a business that had gone through such a huge growth phase, and you're right, you said it right at the start, and I remember the conversation with you. The people that were in the business did see it still as a small business, how it operated on day one, and it had grown to something so wonderful and so exciting. I think that growth had just been lost in translation maybe, and people thought we'll do it the way we always did, which obviously wasn't right for the takeover, but it's but you did amazingly in that role, and I think, I'm sure the MD still says that now.
I still speak to them. I mean, the thing was that the individuals they brought with them were very much sales individuals at the beginning, and they'd grown into they'd almost then gone into a production or warehouse role or a marketing role or a stock role, etc., etc. And they'd almost grown with the business, but to the point where they were still kind of winging it, if you know what I mean. So, and one of those things was, I think, because they hadn't had perhaps a better support behind them in the past, they were just, they came to renewals of things like insurances or, licenses, and they would just renew it. They wouldn't ever question it. They would never question it. And, I think in that, certainly in the last year I was with them, I got involved. We just said, right, I just want to understand where we're at. And I think we knocked £9,000 instantly off the insurance bill because we'd just been completely, the typical thing with insurance is if you never challenge it, it just goes up and up and
just
up.
Keeps going up,
And it's, and I didn't do anything. It wasn't to my credit that we changed that, but it was more the fact that because I was there, that person had to spend more time and look at it. And actually, when you realise that, with just a little bit of guidance, well, how about we look at this and this and this, still let him go away and do it. He came back with a quote that was so much different. I mean, £9,000 per year
makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Absolutely significant, absolutely significant. And if you can just do that in a few different areas, you're paying for a whole new member of staff. If you can manage to do that in more, 2 or 3 different areas. So that was one of the biggest challenges I faced. And by the time we finished it, we'd got the audit scores up. We managed to achieve what we needed to achieve, but it was difficult because.
Do you know what I'm going to say here? And this is to all the candidates that are perhaps listening to this, and I think you'll agree, Olly, is that in those first few months when you join a business, because I remember the conversations, Olly, in those first few months when you join a business, it can be pretty tough. And you had a huge task ahead of you that you actually didn't realise was there until you joined. But you persisted, didn't you? And you did exceptionally well. And I know that's quite a key point in your career history now, because you achieved so much there and faced challenges that you hadn't done in any other businesses. So I think my message to candidates there is those first few months, really get yourself into the nitty-gritty of the business, get yourself involved, and don't give up. A lot of people do give up in those first few months because it's tough. Whereas you actually went on to have a really great position there in that business. And look, I can see you smiling now. You enjoyed that role, didn't you?
After my nervous breakdown,
After the sleepless nights and a very tough first few months. But I think that role was worth it for you in terms of what you achieved from it.
Yeah, do you know what? It's probably one of the best examples of part of the blog and part of this conversation was I went in, didn't realise what was happening. I found this huge challenge. And after only a matter of months of hard work, dedication, commitment, putting in the hours, showing that I was the right candidate for them, for that business, they did exactly what I said at the beginning of this post. They came back to me and I said to them, look, you've got all these challenges. I documented it. I went through it all and said, look, you're not going to get anywhere unless we make these changes. We actually need to do it. And one of the key things was that exactly what I said at the very beginning. They turned around to me and said, what do you want? What do you need? And that was exactly that proof of hard work, commitment, dedication. My ethics of being honest and open, truthful with them, even if they didn't like it. They needed to know it, and that level of trust goes an awful long way with that hard work and commitment. Exactly. So they came back and said, "What do we need to do?" And we put in place a plan of action. And we didn't turn the business around. The business wasn't failing, but from a finance perspective, we turned around completely and moved it from that small business mindset into a PLC mindset. The audit scores we came out with were fantastic, both internal and external. And but it's part of this conversation, isn't it? They could see what we were trying to achieve and how hard working we were, and once they realised that that's what they'd got, they were then going to invest that back into me, to the business, to support, and we actually, by the end of it, we got one of my key support workers. The company never ever offered study support.
Yes, I remember.
I managed to convince them that actually, you've seen all the great work she's done with me, etc. And how we work well together. And we got her onto the ACA program.
Because I think it is about showing your value sometimes, isn't it? And that's a great achievement for that business, is that you managed to turn the viewpoint of the team around, because they just saw you as a hindrance and someone that was nagging them, and making them do something that they couldn't do or didn't understand. And you turn that around. And I think, I feel like we should end it there on a really positive note, because actually it just shows what we've discussed here actually works, and don't be put off by going into a career in finance if you don't have those 5 A stars or 5 A to C GCSEs. You can become a professionally qualified accountant at the financial controller level, like Olly is today, just by that hard work ethic, commitment. It all comes together, and you've got a wonderful career ahead of you, and have had a wonderful career the last few years. So